Have you ever wondered how one woman managed to lead an entire nation during a time of chaos? The story of Deborah, the only female judge of Israel, is a remarkable tale of courage, faith, and leadership. In a society dominated by men, Deborah rose not only as a respected leader, but also as a prophetess chosen by God. Her life challenges preconceived notions of leadership, proving that when God calls someone, neither gender nor social status can stand in the way. Join us on this captivating journey to uncover how an extraordinary woman reshaped the course of Israel's history. After the death of Joshua, Israel found itself in a period of great turmoil, known as the era of the Judges. It was a time marked by political instability and spiritual decline, where the absence of a central leader left the people in disarray and confusion. Deborah's story is an inspiring example of resilience and trust in God during challenging times. In a culture where leadership roles were typically reserved for men, Deborah distinguished herself not only as a political leader, but also as a highly regarded prophetess. Her life demonstrates that God can use anyone, regardless of gender or status, to fulfill His divine purposes. Let's dive deeper into this compelling narrative and explore how Deborah's extraordinary leadership changed Israel's trajectory. After Joshua's death, Israel entered a turbulent period called the Time of the Judges. It was an era characterized by political instability and spiritual decay. Without a strong leader to guide them, the people were left in a state of disorder and confusion. The book of Judges vividly describes this chaotic period. In Judges 21 verse 25, it states, "In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit." During this time, Israel repeatedly fell into a cycle of disobedience to God, suffering oppression from their enemies, and eventually experiencing deliverance. They would turn away from the Lord, worship the idols of neighboring nations, and, as a result, fall under the oppressive rule of their adversaries. In their suffering, the Israelites would cry out to God, and in His mercy, He raised up judges to deliver them. This recurring pattern was not just a series of random events, but a reflection of the covenant relationship between God and Israel. The book of Judges lays out this cycle clearly. In chapter 2, verses 14 to 16, we find a detailed explanation of this phenomenon. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and He gave them into the hands of raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to bring disaster, just as He had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges, who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Judges 2 verses 14 to 16. This cycle was not merely a historical account, but a powerful testament to God's faithfulness, even in the midst of Israel's rebellion. Whenever the people strayed from the Lord's path, they suffered the consequences of their actions. Yet, God never fully abandoned them. Whenever they cried out for help, His mercy prevailed, and He sent a deliverer to rescue them. It was in this context of repeated disobedience and oppression that Israel faced one of its most severe trials. The book of Judges vividly captures this critical moment. In chapter 4, verses 1 to 3, we read, "After Ehud died, the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help." Judges 4 verses 1 to 3. Jabin, the Canaanite king, along with his formidable general Sisera, established a harsh and oppressive rule over Israel. With an overwhelming military force that included 900 iron chariots, they subjugated the Israelites for 2 long decades. For 20 long years, the Israelites endured severe oppression under the rule of the Canaanites. This was no fleeting hardship. The iron chariots mentioned in Scripture symbolized an advanced military technology, offering a significant advantage on the battlefield. Against their poorly equipped forces, these chariots made the Canaanite army seem virtually unstoppable from a human perspective. Under the strategic command of Sisera, Canaan's war machinery appeared invincible. The oppression wasn't confined to military dominance. It extended into economic and social realms. The Israelites lived under a constant shadow of fear and abuse. They faced heavy tributes, restrictions on their freedom of worship and movement, and even forced labor. The situation became so dire that many began to wonder if God had forsaken them. It was at this critical juncture, when all hope seemed lost, that God intervened in an extraordinary way. True to his promise, he raised up Deborah, an exceptional woman, to serve as a judge and prophetess in Israel. The Bible introduces Deborah with remarkable clarity and authority. In Judges 4 verses 4-5, it says, "Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided." Deborah was a figure unlike any other in Israel's history. As a prophetess, she received direct messages from God and delivered them to the people. At a time when Israel had strayed from God's path, Deborah became a vital conduit for divine communication, calling the nation back to faithfulness. In her role as judge, Deborah settled disputes and made pivotal decisions for the nation. Her responsibilities were not merely legal or administrative. They often extended to military leadership. Judges were divinely appointed leaders tasked with guiding and protecting God's people. The fact that Deborah, a woman, held such a position of authority was both extraordinary and noteworthy, showcasing that God can use anyone, regardless of gender or status, to fulfill his purposes. The palm of Deborah, as mentioned in Scripture, became a landmark of great significance. Located between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, it was more than a geographical marker. It symbolized justice and God's presence. People from across the nation sought Deborah's wisdom and guidance. Sitting under the palm, she listened attentively and, under God's direction, provided wise and just solutions. This scene serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of leaders who are accessible and attuned to the needs of their people. Deborah did not isolate herself in a palace or temple. She remained among the people, listening to their concerns and serving as a beacon of hope and guidance. Deborah was always accessible, ready to hear the concerns of her people and offer divine guidance. The respect and trust that the Israelites placed in her were undeniable. In a patriarchal society where women seldom held leadership positions, Deborah emerged as a unique and highly regarded figure throughout the nation. Her authority stemmed not only from her role as a judge, but also from her unwavering integrity and deep relationship with God. Deborah's rise as a leader marked a turning point in Israel's history. After 2 decades of harsh oppression, the Israelites finally had a leader who would guide them back to God and towards freedom. Deborah stood as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, God had not forsaken his people. With her steady leadership as both judge and prophetess, events began to shift dramatically. The cries of Israel for deliverance did not go unanswered. Through Deborah, God began to pave the way for their liberation. The book of Judges details the start of this pivotal journey. In Judges 4 verse 6, it says, "She sent for Barak son of Abinoam from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, 'The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor.'" The divine message, delivered through Deborah, signaled the start of a new chapter in Israel's history. God not only chose Deborah as a spiritual leader and judge, but also appointed Barak as the military commander. Barak was tasked with leading Israel's forces against the oppressive Canaanites. His selection was significant. Coming from Kadesh and Naphtali, a region heavily impacted by Canaanite oppression, Barak had a personal stake in the fight for liberation. His knowledge of the terrain also provided a crucial strategic advantage. God's plan, as revealed through Deborah, was both clear and precise. Barak was to rally 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. These northern tribes were strategically positioned near Mount Tabor, which would serve as the assembly point for Israel's army. The strategic location of Mount Tabor, standing at an elevation of 588 meters above sea level, provided a commanding view of the Jezreel Valley, the site where the battle would unfold. From this vantage point, Deborah continued to convey God's plan to Barak. In Judges 4 verse 7, she declares, I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops, to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. This detail is significant. God not only assured victory, but also revealed a critical element of his strategy. The plan involved drawing Sisera and his formidable forces to the Kishon River, typically a modest stream. During the rainy season, it could transform into a powerful torrent. This natural occurrence would play a pivotal role in the impending battle, as we'll see later. The promise of delivering Sisera into Barak's hands was more than a forecast of triumph. It was a call to action and faith. Barak needed to place complete trust in God's word, as conveyed through Deborah, and mobilize his troops accordingly. Barak's response to this charge is recorded in Judges 4 verse 8. If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go. At first glance, this reply might seem like a lack of faith. After all, Barak had received a direct assurance of victory from God. However, a deeper analysis reveals another layer of understanding. Barak recognized the symbolic and spiritual significance of Deborah's presence. As a prophetess, Deborah was not merely a guide. Her presence served as a tangible reminder of God's involvement in the battle. Having her by his side was not just a military strategy, but also a spiritual act that would uplift the morale of the troops and solidify their confidence in divine intervention. Deborah's response sheds further light on the situation. In Judges 4 verse 9, she states, I will surely go with you. However, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. This reply highlights both her willingness to support Barak and a prophetic insight into how the victory would unfold. Deborah agreed to accompany Barak, demonstrating her full commitment to the mission and her readiness to lead from the front lines. However, she also delivered a startling prophecy. The ultimate glory would not belong to Barak, but to a woman. This defied the cultural norms of the time, where military glory was typically reserved for men. Additionally, this prophecy added an element of suspense to the narrative. Who would this woman be, destined to claim the spotlight in such a significant victory? As we shall see, the answer would be unexpected. With God's plan laid out, preparations for the battle began. Judges 4 verse 10 recounts, Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men followed him. Deborah also went with him. Barak assembled his army in obedience to God's command, with Deborah standing by his side, reaffirming her role as both spiritual and military leader during this pivotal moment for Israel. Raising an army of 10,000 men after 2 decades of oppression was no small feat. Many Israelites were demoralized and gripped by fear, having lived under the heavy yoke of a vastly superior enemy. Facing the Canaanites, equipped with their advanced iron chariots, required not only courage, but an unwavering faith in God's promises. This battle would mark the end of an era of oppression under King Jabin and signal the beginning of a new chapter for Israel. Deborah and Barak, spiritual and military leaders alike, prepared to confront the formidable army led by Sisera. The account in Judges 4 verse 12 highlights the significance of Israel's mobilization. When they told Sisera that Barak son of Abinoam had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera gathered together all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him. Upon learning of Barak's movements at Mount Tabor, Sisera wasted no time. He mobilized his formidable military force, including 900 iron chariots, and marched toward the Kishon River. Judges 4 verse 13. For Sisera, this was the perfect opportunity to crush the Israelite rebellion with overwhelming force. The iron chariots, symbols of Canaanite power, represented a significant tactical advantage. These advanced machines could break through enemy formations and spread panic among opposing troops. Against the Israelites, who primarily fought on foot, the technological superiority of the Canaanites seemed insurmountable. At the pivotal moment, Deborah issued a command filled with faith and divine authority. In Judges 4 verse 14, she proclaimed, "Rise up, for this is the day the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" This directive wasn't merely a military strategy. It was a bold statement of trust in God's promise. Deborah reminded Barak and his troops that the battle was already won because the Lord was leading the charge. Under Barak's leadership, The Israelite army descended from Mount Tabor with unwavering strength and determination. The sight of 10,000 men marching in unison, driven by faith, must have been awe-inspiring. For the Israelites, this battle wasn't just a physical confrontation. It was a spiritual clash, aimed at breaking the chains of decades-long oppression. As the army moved forward, the destiny of Israel hung in the balance. This battle would not be decided by sheer military might or troop numbers, but by divine intervention. Meanwhile, Sisera and his Canaanite forces advanced with full confidence. Armed with 900 iron chariots and well-equipped soldiers, Sisera anticipated a swift and decisive victory. The valley beneath Mount Tabor seemed an ideal battlefield for deploying his formidable war machines. However, what happened next was utterly unexpected. Judges 4 verse 15 recounts how the Lord threw Sisera, his chariots, and his entire army into disarray. This victory is explicitly attributed to divine intervention, suggesting that something extraordinary unfolded on the battlefield. The narrative hints at God's direct involvement, which left the Canaanite forces in complete chaos. Although the biblical text provides few specifics, it's evident that an unforeseen event shifted the tide in favor of the Israelites. Many scholars believe that weather played a crucial role in this victory. There are indications that a sudden storm might have swept through, transforming the battlefield to Israel's advantage. The Kishon River, typically a calm stream, could have surged into a raging torrent due to the downpour. If this were the case, the impact on the battle would have been catastrophic for the Canaanites. The muddy terrain would have rendered their iron chariots useless, turning their greatest strength into a significant liability. The horses, struggling to pull the heavy chariots through the mire, would have been easy targets for the Israelite soldiers. Furthermore, if the Kishon River overflowed its banks, many Canaanite soldiers, especially those in the chariots, could have been swept away by the current, sealing their defeat. This unexpected turn of events was no mere coincidence. It was a testament to God's power, intervening at a critical moment to deliver his people. The Israelite soldiers, lighter and more adept at navigating difficult terrain, likely held a significant advantage under such adverse conditions. The battlefield must have descended into chaos. Imagine the Canaanite army, so confident in their technological superiority, suddenly finding themselves powerless against the overwhelming forces of nature. Their iron chariots, once their pride and tactical advantage, quickly became a hindrance. They were either stuck in the mud or swept away by the rushing waters. Panic likely spread rapidly among the Canaanite ranks. Watching their once dominant war machines rendered useless and seeing their comrades fall or get carried away by the river, many soldiers would have desperately tried to flee. The confusion within Sisera's army, as mentioned in the biblical account, could have stemmed from this combination of unexpected events and extreme natural conditions. Meanwhile, the Israelite forces, emboldened by this evident act of divine intervention, would have launched their attack with renewed vigor. Judges 4 verse 16 narrates how Barak pursued Sisera's chariots and his army all the way to Harosheth Hagoyim. The passage emphasizes that the entire army fell by the sword, leaving no survivors. This pursuit ensured that the victory was both decisive and complete. It wasn't enough to defeat the Canaanites on the battlefield. It was essential to utterly dismantle their military capability to secure Israel's freedom. The phrase, "not a man was left," is particularly striking. It underscores the totality of the victory. The once formidable Canaanite army, with its feared iron chariots, was entirely destroyed. This triumph marked the end of Canaanite oppression over Israel. Finally, Judges 4 verse 23 concludes the battle's narrative. On that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites. This statement highlights that the victory was ultimately the work of God. It wasn't human strength or military strategy, but divine power that ensured the liberation of his people. The battle against the Canaanites was much more than a mere military confrontation. It served as a crucial turning point in Israel's history, signaling the end of 2 decades of brutal oppression. It also stood as a powerful demonstration of God's might and the unwavering faith of his people. For the Israelites, this victory signified not only freedom, but also a renewed confidence. After years of fear and subjugation, they emerged as conquerors over their oppressors. The courage and faith demonstrated on that day left a lasting impact on the nation. This victory not only transformed individual lives, but also solidified Israel's collective identity as a people under God's protection. After the devastating defeat of his army, Sisera, the feared commander of the Canaanites, found himself in a dire situation. The man who had once commanded 900 iron chariots against Israel was now fleeing alone on foot, desperately trying to evade Barak and his relentless forces. As he fled, Sisera left behind a trail of chaos and ruin, frantically searching for a place to hide. Just hours earlier, he had been confident of his impending victory, relying on his superior military power. Now he was a fugitive, utterly vulnerable. His once mighty army lay in ruins, and his strength had crumbled to dust. In his desperation, Sisera arrived at the camp of the Kenite, a nomadic tribe known for maintaining peaceful relations with both the Israelites and the Canaanites. He believed that, due to the alliance between King Jabin of Hazor and Heber the Kenite's household, he would find safe haven there. As he approached the camp, Sisera noticed the tent of Jael, Heber's wife. In that era, it was customary for women to have their own separate tents. Seeing Jael outside, Sisera approached her, hoping for hospitality and protection. Recognizing the Canaanite commander in his desperate state, Jael saw a unique opportunity. Without showing any hostility, she invited him into her tent, offering refuge and rest. Grateful for her kindness, Sisera accepted the invitation. Exhausted from the battle and his escape, the promise of a safe hiding place was too tempting to resist. Confident in the alliance between his king and the Kenite, Sisera lowered his guard. Once inside, he requested some water to quench his thirst after the grueling events of the day. But Jael went beyond his simple request. Instead of water, she offered him milk in a noble vessel, an act that likely deepened Sisera's sense of security, convincing him he was in a safe haven. After drinking, Sisera, worn out and now fully trusting in Jael's hospitality, asked her to stand at the tent's entrance and deny his presence if anyone came looking for him. Feeling assured of his safety, he lay down and soon drifted into a deep sleep. It was in this pivotal moment that Jael made a bold decision that would alter the course of history. Mientras Sisera dormia profundamente, Jael tomó un martillo y una estaca de tienda. Con movimientos silenciosos y calculados, ese acercó al general dormido. En un gol poderoso y preciso, clavó la estaca a través de su sien, atravesando su cabeza y fijándola al suelo. La acción fue rápida y letal. Sisera murió al instante, sin oportunidad de defenderse. The feared general who had oppressed Israel for 2 decades met his end at the hands of a courageous woman, inside a modest tent. Jael's decision was an act of immense bravery and risk. She understood the potential repercussions if her actions were discovered, and Sisera's allies learned of her betrayal. Nevertheless, she chose to side with Israel, playing a pivotal role in the nation's deliverance. Meanwhile, Barak continued his pursuit of Sisera. Following the fugitive's trail, he eventually arrived at the Kenite camp. As he approached, Jael came out to meet him with calm determination. "Come," she said, "and I will show you the man you are looking for." Curious and perhaps somewhat expectant, Barak followed Jael into her tent. Inside, he was met with a striking scene. The lifeless body of Sisera lay on the ground, with a tent peg still driven through his temple. The sight of the once feared general, now defeated, must have been both a moment of triumph and relief for Barak. The man who had terrorized Israel and commanded an army that once seemed unbeatable had been brought down in the most unexpected manner. What stands out most about this event is that Sisera's defeat did not occur on the battlefield or at the hands of a warrior, but through the bravery and cunning of a woman. This moment fulfilled Deborah's earlier prophecy. Before the battle, when Barak hesitated to lead without her, Deborah had declared that the glory of victory would be given to a woman. That prophecy was remarkably fulfilled through Jael's decisive actions. Sisera's death marked the final blow to the Canaanites. With their formidable general dead, their army annihilated, and their iron chariots rendered useless, Canaanite oppression over Israel came to a definitive end. Following this decisive victory, Deborah and Barak lifted a song of triumph, recorded in Judges 5. This song, one of the oldest pieces of Hebrew poetry, celebrates Israel's liberation and serves as a powerful testimony to the events that had just transpired. The song opens with a call to praise. Deborah and Barak invite the people to exalt the Lord for the great deliverance He has granted them. They acknowledge that it was God who secured Israel's victory, overthrowing their enemies and ending their suffering. In the introduction of the song, Deborah identifies herself as a mother in Israel, a title that reflects her leadership and her nurturing care for the nation. She then calls upon kings and rulers to listen, emphasizing the significance of the story she is about to recount. The song shifts back in time, painting a vivid picture of the dire conditions in Israel before the battle. The nation was in turmoil, roads were abandoned, and travelers avoided public paths out of fear. Villages lay deserted, and daily life had come to a standstill, until Deborah rose as a leader. Deborah and Barak recount how the people of Israel had turned away from God, worshiping foreign deities, which led to wars reaching their very doorsteps. The song highlights the nation's vulnerability, emphasizing that among 40,000 men in Israel, not a single sword or spear could be found. This detail underscores their defenseless state before the battle. The narrative then shifts to praise the tribes that answered the call to arms. Ephraim, Benjamin, Manasseh, Zebulun, and Issachar are commended for sending their warriors. The leaders of these tribes are celebrated for their courage and willingness to risk their lives for Israel's cause. In contrast, the song criticizes the tribes that chose not to join the fight. Reuben, Gilead, Gad, Dan, and Asher are rebuked for staying home, preoccupied with their own affairs while their brothers fought for freedom. The narrative transitions to the battlefield. It describes how the kings of Canaan came to fight but returned empty-handed, with no spoils of silver, a testament to their total defeat. One striking verse states, "From the heavens, the stars fought. From their courses, they fought against Sisera." This poetic imagery suggests divine or cosmic intervention in the battle, possibly hinting at natural phenomena that tipped the scales in Israel's favor. The Kishon River is mentioned as playing a significant role, described as a torrent that swept away the enemy, supporting the theory that a sudden storm played a crucial role in the Canaanites' downfall. Jael, the woman who ended Sisera's life, receives high praise in the song. She is called most blessed of women for her courageous deed. The song vividly recounts how Jael killed Sisera, highlighting the irony of a mighty warrior meeting his end at the hands of a woman within the confines of her tent. The song then takes a poignant turn, imagining Sisera's mother awaiting his return. She is depicted gazing through a window, wondering why his chariot is delayed. Her attendants attempt to console her, suggesting he is delayed because he's dividing the spoils of war. This scene contrasts the Canaanites' expectation of victory with the reality of their crushing defeat. The song concludes with a powerful prayer. "So may all your enemies perish, O Lord, but may those who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength." This final verse encapsulates the central theme of the song, God's triumph over his enemies and the exaltation of those who remain faithful to him. After Deborah and Barak's triumphant song, the Bible notes that the land experienced peace for 40 years. This era of tranquility was a direct result of their victory over the Canaanites and the wise leadership of Deborah. The song they composed served multiple significant purposes within the biblical narrative. Firstly, it provided a poetic account of the events, preserving the memory of this pivotal moment in Israel's history. Secondly, the song offered additional insights not found in the prose narrative. For example, it highlighted which tribes took part in the battle and which chose to abstain, adding layers of detail previously unmentioned. Thirdly, it provided a theological interpretation of the events, repeatedly emphasizing that the victory was ultimately the Lord's doing, not merely the result of Israel's military efforts. This reinforces the overarching theme of the book of Judges. When Israel remains faithful to God, he grants them triumph over their adversaries. Fourthly, the song served as a public celebration of the victory. It didn't just recount the events but also called on the people to rejoice and praise God for their deliverance, solidifying the memory of these events in the collective consciousness of the nation. Finally, Deborah and Barak's song acted as a reminder for future generations. By being preserved and likely sung repeatedly, it kept the memory of this great deliverance alive, inspiring future generations to place their trust in God during challenging times. Beyond its content, the literary form of the song is remarkable. Considered one of the finest examples of ancient Hebrew poetry, its vivid language and powerful imagery make it an impressive literary work. The song's structure alternates between narrative, praise, and even an imagined scene from the enemy's perspective, showcasing notable sophistication. This indicates that even in the early stages of Israel's history, there was a rich tradition of literary composition. The use of parallelism, a hallmark of Hebrew poetry, is evident throughout the song. Many lines are repeated with slight variations, creating a rhythm and emphasis that would have been striking when sung or recited. Following the decisive victory over the Canaanites and the celebratory song, Israel entered a period of peace and prosperity. According to the book of Judges, the land enjoyed 40 years of tranquility, a significant time of stability for the nation. This period of peace stood as a testament to the lasting impact of the victory and Deborah's steadfast leadership. La derrota de Sisara y su ejercido eliminó la principal amenaza externa, permitiendo al pueblo de Israel vivir sin temor a invasions o represalias. Durante este tiempo, Deborah continuó sirviendo como juez. Su sabiduría y discernimiento, cruciales durante la crisis, también fueron vitales para mantener la paz y resolver disputas internas. Deborah's influence as a judge, prophet, and military leader left a lasting mark on Israel's history. Her story stands out as a unique example of leadership in a male-dominated culture. It serves as a powerful reminder that God can use anyone, regardless of their gender or social status, to accomplish His divine purposes. The impact of Deborah extended far beyond her time. Her life became an enduring inspiration for future generations, serving as a model of courage, faith, and leadership. The Song of Deborah continued to be recited and studied, preserving the memory of her remarkable victory. She demonstrated that true leadership doesn't rely on physical strength or military might, but on wisdom, faith, and the ability to unite a nation during times of crisis. The period of peace that followed the victory allowed Israel to grow stronger as a nation. Without the constant threat of invasion, the people were able to focus on agriculture, trade, and the development of their communities. This era of prosperity was a clear testament to God's blessings upon Israel when they remained faithful to Him. However, as the book of Judges repeatedly shows, this peace was not destined to last. Eventually, a new generation arose, one that did not know the Lord or remember the mighty works He had done for Israel. The familiar cycle of apostasy, oppression, and deliverance began once again. Despite this, Deborah's legacy endured. Her story continued to be told, her song was sung, and her example of faithful leadership inspired many generations to come. Deborah's story offers timeless lessons. It reminds us that God often chooses unexpected leaders to fulfill His plans. It teaches that true strength comes from faith and obedience to God, not from political power or military force. And it encourages us to face life's challenges with courage. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you in our next video. Until then, let's remember that we can all draw inspiration from Deborah's example to live with courage, faith, and purpose.